Welcome to In the Kitchen with the Greater Fort Lauderdale Food and Wine Festival, presented by Visit Lauderdale. Today we're at TRP Taste, right here off of Los Olas Boulevard, where we're going to hang out with Chef Martin from YOLO. You only live once. He's going to walk us through a culinary experience that you'll never forget. Come on inside. So we made it inside the TRP Taste. We're here with Chef Martin from YOLO. You only live once. So Martin, since we only live once, what are we making today? Teach me some new things, put me to work.
Absolutely. I'd love to. So we're gonna be doing a couple of things. First, we're gonna start with oysters, and we're gonna be doing grilled oysters. We're gonna throw them in the grill on live fire. We're gonna season them with a heavy compound butter, and then we're gonna top them off with some breadcrumbs. So you wanna get started with that?
Absolutely, let's get in there.
All right, cool. So I'm afraid of giving you the oyster knife, so
I think everybody in the room would appreciate that.
So while I shuck the oysters, I'm gonna start having you make the compound butter, okay? I'm gonna start throwing ingredients at you. I need you to just mix it and make sure they're very well mixed, okay?
So you're gonna throw ingredients at me and I gotta mix it.
Exactly.
All right.
So put some gloves on, safety first.
So it sounds like you guys have a great safety policy. So you're following the Safe and Clean Pledge, and a lot of the restaurants in Broward County are also following the restaurants, the hotels. So as a patron, as a guest, I can feel comfortable, relaxed, and understand that I'm going to have really good food in a safe, clean environment, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So enough about that. Let's put me to work and let's make some oysters.
So we're going to start with the butter. Start with a butter that is soft. Okay, you got to leave this at room temperature so it's pliable. You can play with it.
Okay. So it's like Play-Doh.
So it's like Play-Doh, exactly.
But melts a lot quicker.
Exactly. So you don't want it to melt all the way through. You still want it to have that emulsion of fat and dairy in there. But we're gonna start with that. So next, I'm gonna start throwing a little bit of ingredients. So very simple ingredients for this is shallots, garlic, lemon, a little bit of parsley, and we'll chop up some parsley leaves in a second. That we'll use a little bit of Parmesan grated on top, and we'll use a little bit of chive. So you'll see that with all these ingredients, extremely simple to use.
And they're fresh.
Correct. Everything is fresh, and it's going to be preserved in the butter. So the beauty about making a compound butter is that you can use it for anything. All right. So we're going to start with some chives there, and you can go ahead and start mixing. I'm going to chop up a little bit of garlic. With a little bit of garlic there. With YOLO, with the guys at TRP, we're always raising the bar. That's one of the biggest things that we have to do throughout the company. So we help each other out to do this. So we're a bunch of different creative people that are working together and trying to stay modern and stay with the times and stay with the trends.
So you're listening to the feedback that the guests are giving you?
Absolutely. We always listen to that. And we're always trying to find ways of bringing a product that maybe our competitors don't have around. Maybe things that people haven't really been doing in this area or for whatever reason. So we're always staying on top of that. And this is one of those dishes. Grilled oysters is something that you don't see often, and you should. It is a phenomenal food. It really is a very tasty food. And we're in Fort Lauderdale. We're right near the ocean. I come from Las Vegas when you don't have an ocean and you got to fly in your fish every day to have fresh fish. We are in the mecca of fresh fish. I mean, we're literally sitting in a little paradise. So with the lemon, we're gonna add a little bit of the juice, not too much because it's gonna turn this a little bit watery. We're gonna use mainly the zest. So I'm gonna use a little bit of the juice, and just about a half for a pound of butter. With the Parmesan, be liberal with it. Be very, it depends on how much cheese you like. And then we're just gonna do a little bit of the zest of the lemon. So with the zest, you don't wanna go too deep. You wanna just get the yellow of the lemon.
What is that doing to the dish itself?
It's basically creating a little bit more citrus, and the skin has a little bit of an earthier taste.
Okay.
So you're gonna get a little bit of that in there as well. I recommend sea salt. Flake sea salt is the best for this purpose because it's crystals. So what happens is when the butter melts on the oysters when they're in the grill, these little crystals will remain as crystals. So when you bite into the oysters, exactly, it's a little bite. So texture and flavors is absolutely necessary on every single one of our ingredients. So we got to make sure that we balance out the flavors. So now the compound butter, now we're gonna add a little bit of extra flavor. And this is my
Besides the
Peruvian
love that I put
upbringing.
into this dish?
Yeah, a little bit more.
All right.
So we're gonna bring a little bit of my Peruvian influence, and that is Ahipanka. Ahipanka is
Ahipanka?
Ahipanka.
All right.
Yeah, it's a Peruvian pepper. It has a little bit of a smokiness to it, not very spicy. Adds a lot of color. Works phenomenal with anything on the grill. Okay, so we're just add a little bit of that. It'll make a nice bright red. Butter.
The color in there is vibrant.
Yes. The thing about oysters, always use an oyster knife. Don't ever do this with a paring knife. I've seen horrific accidents happen. So
Well,
you
that's
just
why
gotta
you're
be
doing
careful
that,
with
not me.
So oysters, always get an oyster knife for that. It's a dull knife. It's got usually a rounded shape, so it doesn't. If it slips off your hand, it won't stab you in the hand. Usually, you
So
always
safety
use a
first.
towel. Always safety first. So use a towel, cover that up with your hand, and then we're gonna go in from the back. So the thing about the oysters is you're gonna wanna break them from the back. There's a little muscle there that if you just pop open, the whole thing will lift, and then we'll carve it in, and we'll break the connective muscle. So basically that. You come this way, clean it. The top part of it will be discarded, and then now you're gonna use the bottom of the knife to deattach the connective muscle of the oyster. So now the oyster is running in the shell. Now, why we pick those shells in particular for the grill is that they're sturdy. They're super hard. So they're actually being the cooking vessel for the oyster when it's on the
instead of
grill.
using a skillet, you...
Exactly. So you're using the natural vessel of the oyster to grill it in there.
Awesome.
So you already have the cooking equipment that you need right there.
So nature is your pan.
Nature, yep, exactly. So now I'm just gonna put the oyster here, sorry. And it's gonna be your job to dress it. So we're gonna dress the oyster.
What size are you? It's not giving me an answer, but...
Medium, extra medium. All right, so we're literally just gonna grab the butter and put it in there. Now,
So ideally at the end of this, the butter should melt and just become part of the oyster.
So the oyster, you get in the fire from underneath, it's gonna cook the bottom of the oyster, the butter's gonna melt, and then it creates like a little stew, like a little sizzle. So chorizo, this chorizo is a Spanish chorizo. It is smoked, and it has paprika in it, very heavily paprika. That's where you get that red. Now, Spanish paprika has that smoky sense to it, so that's where you get a little bit extra smoke in there.
Okay.
Okay. So basically, the chorizo is gonna be our flavoring agent for the crumbs that we're gonna do on top. So to get the most out of the flavor of the chorizo, I just mince it really, really small, and then I put it in a saute pan with a good olive oil, and then we're gonna mix it into the breadcrumbs. And that's really all you have to do. There's not a whole lot to it. A little tiny bit of olive oil, just so that the food doesn't stick. We'll put the chorizo, and we'll kind of let it do its thing.
So it's going to simmer a little bit.
It's gonna simmer away, correct. So now we're gonna throw the oysters on the grill, okay? The oysters are gonna take a little bit on the grill depending on the fire that you have. I definitely don't recommend a super hot fire, like with anything that you do on the grill. You never wanna go that high on a fire. You still want it to stew in the shell. So we're gonna go with a medium heat. It's gonna take a little bit, probably take anywhere between 8 to 10 minutes, but it's a phenomenal product. So that'll give us enough time to get the things that we have. There we go, perfect, perfect. All right, so once they're in the grill, I like mine cheesy. Do you like yours cheesy?
Absolutely.
All right, let's try some more cheese. The same Parmesan that we put into the mix. We got a little bit more cheese in there. Now you can start getting a little bit of the aroma as well. Okay?
So the oysters are on the grill. So we have our chorizo sizzling. So next we're going to make some breadcrumbs to...
Correct. If you can see that the chorizo is rendered, the oil actually acquired a lot of the color of out of the paprika in the chorizo. So now that's going to be our mixing point. So here comes the tough part. Mix it up. There we go. This is the funnest part of doing food for me, is making it come to life. So we're going to do a little bit of lemon with this. I do like to offer lemon with the oyster. And the thing on that is you want that last citrus, that last thing that hits your palate to be that citrus. It's almost like a cleanser.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll have a little bit of a lemon wedge, and then we have rock salt here. Now I use rock salt because it keeps the oysters upright. The oysters are going to be so juicy that there's going to be plenty of liquid in there that you don't want to lose. So you set them on something that will hold them upright the whole time. So by the time that it goes from the kitchen to the table, it's still there.
Makes
Okay.
sense. Makes sense.
So we'll spread them out a little bit. We'll do the lemon wedge right there. And we can start plating our oysters. So we use a different plate to set up, and then we're gonna cover a little bit of this with the chorizo. So these breadcrumbs will be the last thing that you taste on the oyster. Probably the last and the first. All right, we'll do that.
Chef, this looks great.
Oysters, grilled oysters with chorizo.
It was easy. It didn't take a lot of work. You've been watching In the Kitchen with the Greater Fort Lauderdale Food and Wine Festival, presented by Visit Lauderdale. We're back here at TRP Taste with Chef Martin from YOLO. You only live once. Chef, we just finished making a fantastic grilled oyster with some chorizo and breadcrumbs. Next, we're gonna make a fancy chip and dip.
So what we're doing is we're doing a chips and dip. So I'm gonna teach you how to make a foam. We'll grab a little bit of olive oil, okay? A good high quality olive oil always goes a long way. We'll add our shallots and garlic, and we're gonna start.
I started your
rendering
wine
this.
because I was thirsty.
You already started with the wine? Oh, look at you. Half a bottle already. All right. So we'll get that working.
So we're just gonna let this sort of simmer a little bit, get a
Just a
little.
little bit. You're trying to release the aromas of the garlic. You're trying to release the aromas of the shallot. You're not trying to get color in it. You're not trying to do much with it. This dip should be beautifully pearl white.
Okay.
So we're trying to keep the colors in mind with this, okay? So we're basically just bringing it up to temperature. We will know that already when they're translucent. When garlic and shallots are at the peak of their aroma and at the peak of their texture, it's when they're translucent,
Okay.
okay? So this will go for probably another 15 seconds, and then we're gonna deglaze it with the wine, okay? So once that's starting to do that, and you can see that it's a little bit nice and clear, we're gonna go with the wine. And just a little splash of wine.
So we're kind of boiling the
Tasty.
wine out.
Exactly. You're boiling all the alcohol out of the wine, but you're remaining with the flavor.
Okay.
So that's where your flavor lies. And then we'll just add the heavy cream. So now as you see the heavy cream, the pot is already hot. The cream's already starting to sizzle up. You want it to have that warmness to it, because now what we're going to do is we're going to fold in the cheese. Fine grained cheese grater. We'll just grate some cheese. Now the cream is already coming to almost to a boiling point. You don't want it to get to a boiling point and boil away, because what that will do, it will reduce the cream, it'll give it a heavier body, and we won't be able to aerate it as much.
Okay.
So all we're trying to do is make sure that the cream is hot enough to melt the cheese, because that's what's going to give you that Manchego foam. That's where you're going to taste that Manchego. And this is all we're doing. So now, as you can see, the cream already came to a boil. We're going to cool it down with that, and that's basically it. So we're going to whisk it together.
So this will thicken essentially, right?
A little tiny bit, but not much. You don't want it to thicken a whole lot, because we're going to put it in an ISI container.
Okay.
So now we're just going to let it cool down before you can use it. And I'm going to introduce you to one of my good friends, an ISI container.
It's nice to meet you. I'm Rory.
There you go. So the ISI container is basically what creates heavy cream, whipping cream. So have you ever seen, the whipping cream canisters that you buy at the stores? It's actually an
Absolutely.
ISI container that is not rechargeable. This one's rechargeable, so we can put whatever we want in there.
Gotcha.
Okay. Now, if you see, it's a nice consistency. You don't want it to be too thin. How about one of them spoons? Perfect. ISI. So hopefully we won't create much of a mess. So
you're just using a piece of some CO2.
some CO2, and we put it right in here. We'll put it right into the ISI canister. And then now we're going to charge it. So this requires 2 to 3 charges. You see that release? That's the CO2 being released in
You
there.
can hear it come in.
And you shake it. This is how we serve it at YOLO. So we have the cream. So we're gonna top it off with some chives. Whoop. And you know what? Let's grate some more cheese on top of this.
You could never have too much cheese.
Never enough cheese. You are absolutely correct about that. So we'll make it rain in there. Yup. There we go. Now, the beauty about this is how we serve it. We serve it with our homemade potato chips that I brought you to taste. Or you can have it with chips and dip like we do, a YOLO.
This looks great. You have an appetizer, you have your actual dish.
And
Chef, I do think that there's something missing here.
what's that?
I want to throw in some sea salt. Is that cool?
Absolutely. But you got to do it like Salt Bear. All right. And that's our chips and dip with Manchego foam.
You've been
Awesome.
watching another episode of In the Kitchen with the Greater Fort Lauderdale Food and Wine Festival presented by Visit Lauderdale. Make sure you check out Chef Martin at YOLO. Thanks for sticking around.